Good morning. Welcome to Randy's Corner, and I'm your host, Randy Clark. And we got a very special day. I hope everybody's woke up from the national championship game last night. It was really good, plus the inauguration. There was so much going on yesterday, Martin Luther King Day. But today's a different day, and I've got a real special guest with me this morning, Dr. Jonathan Douglas of Broadway Spinal Care and Sylacauga Pickleball. You got a lot of titles.
I got a lot of titles.
Right, but today what I really want to talk about is something that you started up, and I think it's a really great thing, not just for me, but all of our viewers too. Let's talk about your new page that you got on the social media called Make Sylacauga Healthy Again. Kind of goes with yesterday, but this is real serious business, isn't it, Jonathan?
It definitely goes with yesterday. And so there's a federal movement now, the Make America Healthy Again initiative. And for 25 years, Tara and I have been studying and teaching nutrition. And it's been pretty much a failure in most cases because people don't see it as being important to health. And I don't really know why, but the federal government really hasn't backed anybody up because the things we have in our food are just quite toxic. But RFK Jr. is the first person who's talking about this in a really logical way, and what he's saying is absolutely the truth, is that our food supply is killing us. And you look at everything that we have to measure, and it's completely visible that we are making ourselves sick with our food. And so he's got this federal initiative, and Trump is really pushing this, and so we've got some momentum. And so Tara and I were talking about it, and we said, why don't we, because you can't wait for the federal government to do anything but break things, right, usually. So we can't wait for the federal government program to trickle down to Sylacauga. It's just not going to happen. But we thought about, what if we make Sylacauga a model for this, right? And then maybe we can be a model and we can take it to other cities in Alabama. And then maybe the government will notice this and say, wow, Alabama's really gotten on board with this Make America Healthy Again. And now we're going to move this to where we're helping other states learn how to do it. We've got to do something. We can't wait for a hero to come because they never come. So we've got to start doing something at the local level. And that's why we started this Make Sylacauga Healthy Again initiative. If you go to our page, Broadway Spinal Care, and then there's a group you join, Make Sylacauga Healthy Again. And we're going to have a lot of content. I've got providers all over the town. I've got people who teach exercise. I've got nutritionists who are interested in doing it. So we're going to have that kind of content. It's all going to be free. Nobody's going to be selling anything. This is just purely a community initiative to get the information out to people. And there's going to be a lot of content on just little short segments. Every time somebody posts a question, I'm going to create a little bit of an answer so that people can go find it. And then also I've got a lot of patients and a lot of people who have what I would call a health journey. So they've discovered something in their life. And we're going to create little videos of them talking about where they started and what they've learned and how it's helped them. Because a lot of people watch things about health and they might not identify necessarily with me or with Tara about that doesn't fit what their life is. But they might see one of our patients and say, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I deal with. That person is so similar to me, similar age, similar build. And they've succeeded, then maybe I can learn from them. And all of these people are just really interested in just purely volunteering to try to help others along their health journey. But we can't as a country continue doing what we're doing. It's not sustainable. Right. And something has to change. And it looks like for the first time in our career, we actually have some momentum on the federal level to fix some of this where we can change the route. I mean, we've got kids coming in who have arthritis at 10 or 11 years old. Yeah. I mean, never saw that 20 years ago. Yeah. I've got just purely sick kids. We got kids that are on anxiety meds. We've got kids that just purely eat junk. And it just can't go on. Yeah. If it goes on, then we're not going to survive as a society. We can't eat pure junk all the time. Right. We just can't.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, Randy's Corner, the month of January, is dedicated to fitness and healthy eating.
Right.
Well, we've had the fitness part, and I'm guilty of that myself. I try to get my exercise every week. I try to stay fit, but I'll have to admit to you, Jonathan, I don't eat healthy, and I should. You know, I noticed the other day on social media, one of the things that I think might be a start to healthy eating, where they banned the red food coloring. Could you talk on that for just a minute?
Sure. So there's a site called The Truth About Cancer, and it's really a fascinating thing if you've never been there. But they have a list of all the different food additives and what studies have shown that they cause cancer. And none of this stuff should be in our food. It should just never be in our food. But anything that has a color like that, a blue or yellow or red or whatever, you can go to that Truth About Cancer and you'll see the studies showing that this stuff does cause cancer.
Right.
So that red number, whatever, 3 or whatever they banned, they should have banned all of them, but the 3 should have been banned like 30 years ago. They took it out of cosmetics and they said it causes all kinds of problems, but then they allow you to eat it. Yeah. But if we can't see it, then it's different, right? If you put it on your skin and it causes a big whelp, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want that. You know, that's bad. But if you eat it, you don't see that, but it causes the same inflammation and the same kind of problems. So it looks like the FDA is finally going to move away from the model of being just a rubber stamp for whatever you pay to push through there and start actually looking at things and worrying about us. And it's going to take somebody watching it, and I believe that's what RFK is going to do. Right. He's going to go in and say, hey, if you're going to give us something to eat, you need to show me it's safe. If it's not safe, then pull it out, and then you have to prove it is safe, right, which is the simplest thing there is. If you go to Europe, we don't eat any of those things. I mean, we've traveled throughout Europe, and you just don't see any of these foods. When you go in the supermarket, you don't even have to read labels. They don't have junk in their food. It's not allowed. It's crazy. And you come here, and then we can't eat 99% of things that are in the supermarket because it's just junk. So we've got to do something.
You know, it's, I hope I'm saying this right. It might not necessarily be the things we eat. What about the things that we are cooking it with? I mean, such as oils and stuff.
It's all the above. Seed oils have always been a problem, and they're being talked about like I've never seen now because RFK has brought this up. But there's a whole list, and I'm going to put it on our Make Sylacauga Healthy Again page, of the list of how inflammatory these oils are. It's like a sunflower or safflower seed oil are really, really, if you eat them, you're going to be inflamed. And it's going to cause pain, and it's going to cause other problems. And so if you just start making a little bit better choices like that, but it's not necessarily, you could buy the best meat and cook it in junk oil, and then you got a problem. So it's a little more complicated than just eating good things. You've got to prepare them in the right way. And there's a spectrum. There's people who think nothing about what they eat. They eat absolutely whatever's put in front of them, never ever think about it.
Oh my.
And then Tara and I are at this spectrum where we look at every single thing we eat. We make a conscious decision. We look at labels, we look at how it's prepared. Every single thing I eat, I think about, I know what's in it, and I decide, is that something that I want to be built out of? Is it going to help me achieve some goal, or is it not? And if it's not, then we generally don't eat it. Now there are exceptions. I mean, there can be treats, but most people treat their food as a constant treat, right? They eat something bad for breakfast, then they eat something bad for dinner, and they're like, oh my gosh, I had a long day, I'm gonna have a bunch of ice cream and so on. So everything becomes a treat. When everything becomes a treat, then you start having problems. Yeah. That's all there is to it.
Guilty.
Guilty.
I'm guilty. You know, I like to joke around and say that I'm on a sea diet. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about the ocean. I'm talking about I eat anything I see.
You see food.
You know, it's kind of, I say it in a jokingly way, but it's, I really shouldn't do that. I mean, I know. Mm-hmm.
So our first video on Make Sylacauga Healthy is about 40 minutes. I did it last week. It talks about the beginning stage of looking at labels. And there's some very simple things you can start to look at. And if you eliminate some just very, very simple things. So if you look at a label and it says corn, or it says soy, or it has some chemical that you would not have at home, then if you start eliminating those things, that's just a baby step. Because you can find better alternatives to almost everything. So if you got, like I just did one on potato chips. If you really want to eat potato chips, it's not the greatest choice potentially, but there are avocado chips that I love and eat periodically. They have avocado oil and potatoes and salt, right? Okay. But you look at Lay's and it's got MSG and yeast extract and all these sodium benzoate, all these preservatives. So you're building yourself out of something toxic where you could have gone over just a little bit and purchased a healthier option, and you could have none of that toxic stuff coming into you. And so that's what we're really focusing on in the beginning, is just baby steps, just learning how to read labels. We're going to go to the supermarket. I'm going to invite whoever wants to go. We're going to go to Publix. We're going to walk around. We're going to look at food, and people say, oh my gosh, I love this. Can we find some better one? Is this a good option? And so we just want to do this and again, it's all going to be free. It's just something we're providing, and I'm hoping a lot of providers want to volunteer on this, because we've got to do something to make ourselves healthier, and people just don't know how to be healthy. People say that to us all the time. I just don't know where to start. Starting point is starting to read labels and know what to avoid. And so that's where we're going.
Let me ask you this. We've always heard, and I try to go by this, vegetables, fruits and vegetables. But the things that they're putting on these to preserve them, are those bad for us?
It's bad for us. But you know what? Again, we have to talk about a spectrum. So if we've got somebody who is eating nothing but Doritos and drinking Mountain Dew, let's say, which is about as bad as you could get, then we go to somebody who's like, I'm now starting to worry about what's on my fruits and vegetables. That's a great shift. Right. I'll take that shift all day long, right? We could start looking at that. But if we could just get the Doritos out of it, then the other is so small, right? People eat this super toxic stuff and don't even think about it, and then they say, now I'm worried about my apple. I mean, the apple is like a 1 out of 10, and the Doritos are like a 10 out of 10. So why don't we eliminate the thing that's really bad, and then we could start fine-tuning. If you want to fine-tune, that's great, and we're there for you. But most people aren't at that stage. They just need to take the really bad stuff
out.
The
baby steps.
The baby steps. It's all about baby steps.
Another question. Let's take orange juice, for example. You got orange juice that costs $3, and you got orange juice that costs $7. You still need to read the labels, because just because it costs $7 doesn't mean it's more healthy than one that costs $3, right?
No. Everybody wants to make this complicated, but everything we've talked about comes down to the same thing: reading the label. And knowing how to read the label, because people will read a label and they don't even know what it means, right? But if you could start to become a really good consumer of labels, then you can solve most of your health problems. Probably 90% of health problems are really caused by people eating just toxic stuff. And if we eat things that are inflammatory, which we do, and all of these chemicals that we take into our body, then we hurt. And then we go buy Advil. And then we take Advil to try to make it not hurt, right? But it doesn't make sense. You're never going to get to the point where you can get the inflammation down. You can hide it, but if you're taking in something every single day that's causing the inflammation, how in the world is that Advil ever going to solve that problem? Right? I was talking to someone last week whose child has ADHD, and she has all these supplements she's taking, which can be really helpful. And we've worked with a lot of kids who have ADHD, but he eats junk, like pure junk. Drinks blue stuff, came in with a drink from Taco Bell that's blue. And I said, it doesn't matter what you give them supplement-wise. You're not going to solve your problem, because you're just feeding. It's like you got a car that runs on gas and you're just feeding it diesel all the time. It doesn't matter what additive you put in there. You might be able to make it run. It's just never going to run right.
Right. Well, I had a friend I used to work with a while back that was on the Atkins diet. I've never dieted. I really don't know nothing about the diets, but he was telling us about, he was on the Atkins diet, and he would eat a can of tuna fish and cut a tomato in half for break, and he would eat the same for lunch. But he kept saying, this diet's crazy. He was on it like 3 months. He said, I'm not losing any weight.
Yeah.
Well, the more we got to talk to him, the more we got talking about, well, when he gets off, his wife was working an hour later than him. So he'd go home, fix him a triple-decker sandwich with a couple of Diet Cokes, and then wait on his wife to cook supper. You're kind of defeating the purpose, right?
Well, diets in general don't work. We've seen every type. We've had patients try every single thing imaginable.
Is it just something to sell us a diet drink? Is that what they're doing?
It really is. But it all comes down to just not feeding yourself toxins. And that's all there is to it. If you eat things that are healthy, and most people, if they look at something, you can tell it's healthy. Like if I pick up a bag of Doritos, you know that's not a great eating choice, right? In the back of your mind, you have to know that this is not a great. And one of the most frustrating things for me is working with these kids with tennis and pickleball and athletes and we have some kind of a, let's say we win some tournament, right? And they have a celebration event. And what do? We show up and they've got cupcakes and Coke and Dr. Pepper. So we're teaching our kids that when you do something good and you achieve something, you get to eat really terrible things, right? That's not what athletes do. That's really not what society can do. We've got to take food and make it fuel and take away the fun. It can be fun every once in a while, but food can't be fun all the time, or you're going to have health problems. So you just have to make that choice. Are you going to be disciplined, or you're going to regret it later and have health problems? It's going to be one or the other, and it will hit you at some point. It always
You're
does.
talking about the labels. Should we be aware of the long words that we don't know?
Yeah, I mean, one of the simplest things I heard in a nutrition seminar, it's always stuck with me. It said, if your grandmother wouldn't have had it in her pantry, then you don't eat it, right? So, I mean, you see, like, let's just use sodium benzoate, which is a preservative. So, do you have sodium benzoate in a shaker that you add to food? No, because why would you do that at home, right? And so, all these things are just made in a lab. And if they're made in a lab, they're just not healthy. Canola, most people don't know this, canola oil, it means Canadian lab. That stuff is produced, it was designed in a lab in Canada.
Never
and now
thought
it's
of that.
produced. Canola oil, that's what it means. So there's just so much stuff. Another one that we talk about, and I'll just throw this one out quickly, is Splenda. We talk about Splenda all the time, sucralose. That stuff is so toxic, it kills your gut bacteria. And if you start killing your gut bacteria, then your health just goes down like crazy. People think they're making great choices. We take people off of it, they stop hurting as much. See it all the time.
Right. Okay. Jonathan, I got about 1 minute.
Yep.
I want to do a quick quiz.
Go for it.
Okay. Healthy or unhealthy?
Okay.
Little Debbie cakes.
Unhealthy in so many ways, mainly because, I mean, it's toxic stuff, sugar and whatever else, but if you look at Little Debbie's, you're going to see so many preservatives in that because they sit there forever and never go bad. And so if you eat preservatives and it preserves that, it's preserving you.
Donuts.
Donuts. Donuts can be a healthier choice if they're cooked in a certain way. So that's a really good example. Like I could make a donut at home with non-GMO flour and cook it in the right kind of oil. Wouldn't be terrible. Wouldn't be any worse than other things. But if you go buy them, then you got to look and see what it is. Usually a seed oil.
Is it also the things that you get on the donut as the glazed stuff?
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. And it tastes great. As a treat, no problem. As a typical food, major problem.
Cheeseburgers.
Cheeseburgers can be healthy. I mean, if you get a good cheese and you get a grass-fed meat and you make your own bun, then you're fine.
Baked potato.
Baked potato, I'm not a huge fan of potatoes, but if you get your own potato and you cook it and you have a grass-fed butter, and you can make something great. But I mean, if you go out and you squeeze something from a fast food place onto it, or whatever else, get a margarine or whatever, it's a purely awful choice. So they're in this spectrum, right? If you start knowing how to read labels and you start knowing how to make your own things, then you can make good choices. And people are like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to eat anything that tastes good. You can eat things that taste good all the time.
Right.
You just have to make them in a healthy way.
Okay. My problem is all the stuff I put on my baked potato.
Of course.
I kind of make a meal out of it.
Salads, I mean, it's all the same. People put stuff on it that's toxic, and then they make something healthy into something unhealthy. Reading labels.
Well, Jonathan, thank you for coming in.
Glad to be here.
We want to make sure everybody turns to the page, make Sylacauga healthy again. We did it with a litter program. We got everybody else participating. Let's do it with a healthy eating too.
Sounds good.
And I'm guilty, and I promise I'm going to try to eat better.
Sounds great.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Stay tuned for more Daybreak.